Good evening, Wilmington. Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting for Monday, May 8th. I'm the chair, Chris Johnson from the 7th District. I will do a roll call first. Members in attendance. Vice Chair Harley, 4th District.
Present.
Councilmember Oliver, 3rd District.
Present.
Councilmember Field, 8th District.
Present.
Councilmember Bracy at large.
Present.
Councilmember Spadola at large.
Present.
And Council President Congo.
Here.
Okay. We'll also do a roll call of council members in attendance. I don't have the screen in front of me, so please, if you're online, council member, can you please announce yourself?
Councilmember Shanae Darby, the 2nd District.
Okay. All right. Very well. As a friendly reminder, only members of the committee should be making motions and seconding. At this time, I will actually proceed with the agenda. We have quite a lengthy agenda as this is budget season, so I'm going to try to get through everything. We are limited by time constraints, so let's just jump right to it. The first item on the agenda is substitute 1 to ordinance 23-0414, which is an ordinance to amend chapters 4, 5, and 12 of the Wilmington City Code to increase certain fines. Just as a preface, I understand we do have someone from the administration here to speak on this matter. Frankly, this is something that this ordinance has been floated around and discussed quite at length over probably the past year. This is something we saw us as a necessary step towards stabilizing our neighborhood and our finances. Point blank is that outside of raising property taxes, we are limited in what we can do to raise revenue with the city. And when those realities hit you as a council member, you get creative and you really start thinking outside the box and how we can both offer the services we need to our residents and our businesses, but also give be fair to everyone. And so that's sort of where we are. I will give more comments later, but just, this isn't a spur of the moment ordinance. This is something that's been out there for almost a year. So with that being said, I will turn it over to the administration. I believe we have Chief of Staff Tanny Washington as well. And then I believe Mr. Rego, the floor is yours, sir.
All right, thank you very much, Chair and committee members. Thank you for this opportunity to appear before you. With me is Stephanie Mergler, also Deputy Chief of Staff here in the administration. The administration is seeking council's support for an ordinance to amend Chapter 4, Chapter 5, and Chapter 12 of the Wilmington City Code to increase certain business licenses, permits, inspection, certificate, application, and event fees. Now, these fees are administered by the Departments of Licenses and Inspections, Department of Land Use and Planning, the Fire Marshal's Office, and the Department of Finance in order to defray costs associated with administering and enforcing the city's laws and the provision of certain municipal services. A fee review such as this one should be conducted periodically by all governments. Such a review ensures that fees related to the services, functions, and operations of various city committees or departments are set at a rate that fully compensate for the costs of providing these services. Government functions most effectively when it has sufficient revenue with which to provide services and programs. These fees, the fees being updated, have not been reviewed for many years, some as long as 55 years ago, while others were reviewed 28 years ago, others reviewed in the mid-2000s, but all need to be updated. When the city provides licensing, permitting, inspections, certificates, and regulates application and event fees, it is ensuring that businesses that provide services to the public are properly licensed or permitted. This provides some sense of safety for consumers. The ordinance presents reasonable and justifiable fee increases based on inflationary increases, which will assist the city in covering its expenses. The fee changes will result in an additional $2 million in annual revenue. Annual licensing, permitting, inspections, as well as business certificate and application fees are part of the cost of doing business. City businesses pay these fees each year and have accepted the city's role in regulating how they conduct business. The administration and city council agreed that the process used to update fees should be understandable to the public and fair, using 2020 instead of 2023 as the update year. The following are the formulas that were used to update these fees. And again, we begin with the year 2020. So land use and L&I fees were last increased in 2014. We used a conservative rate of 2%. We could have gone to 3%, but we used 2% inflation over 6 years, which is the period of 2014 to 2020. Business license fees were last increased in 1994. So we used, again, a conservative rate of 2% inflation over 26 years, which is the period 1994 to 2020. FMO fees that's the fire marshal's office. Fees had not been updated for varying periods of time. So since there was no 1 year from which to start the review, our fire marshal, Gabe Pabon, performed a comparison of rates in other cities that have paid fire departments and comparable fees. The cities included Reading, Pennsylvania, Alexandria, Virginia, Durham, North Carolina, Jacksonville, Florida, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and then Springfield, Massachusetts. For the rental license fee, we applied the Federal Reserve's 30-year rental index to determine the rate of inflation for rental rates. That resulted in an increase from $50 per first unit to $109.76 per first unit. Then we reduced the new rate to $100, just evened it off there, and also converted from our multi-tier rate structure to a flat rate structure. After recent administration and council discussions, both branches agreed to amend the legislation's original $10,120 cap for rental license fees. The new cap in this version of the legislation will be $5,000 for rental business owners that rent to low-income and senior citizen tenants. And the original $10,120 cap for all other rental unit licenses is eliminated. I want to note that nonprofit agencies, since there was the word nonprofit in some earlier discussions, the nonprofit agencies are currently exempt from paying business license fees. Now, they must apply for a business license. That's simply to make sure they are on our rolls as doing business in the city, but they do not have to pay a business license fee. So this ordinance does not change the current exemption for nonprofits. To ensure that the new fees do not adversely affect newer, smaller, or startup businesses, the administration and council have agreed to amend the original legislation so that small businesses in existence for less than 3 years, and for those businesses employing 10 or fewer employees, will be assessed the current $180 annual business license fee. All other businesses would then be assessed the new $300 annual fee. The administration is also committed to amending the city's current licensing fee application process as soon as feasible to provide an online application and payment process. The administration agrees with council that businesses, especially smaller businesses, should be provided with as much convenience for the application and payment process, and that does not require them, for instance, to leave their shop for a day or close up in order to come here to City Hall to apply for a business license. So with that, we ask this evening that the legislation be released from committee and taken to council for a full vote. and I thank you very much for the opportunity to present a summary of this legislation.
All right, now I'll turn it to members of council. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Spadola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Rego. A while ago, I emailed, I'm sure you knew, but the city of Newark raised landlord fees probably a decade ago or so and had a lawsuit by the Newark Landlord Association that was litigated on behalf of the city, actually by our newest Supreme Court Justice, Chris Griffiths. But recently we got a letter from the Greater Wilmington Housing Authority, Greater Wilmington landlords threatening a lawsuit. So I'm curious if you can, have you, what do you know about the letter? And have you looked into the Newark lawsuit? And any idea as to the cost of a potential lawsuit if these rental fees were raised?
What I can tell you is we believe that this is a lawful piece of legislation, and we stand behind it.
Sure, but I'm asking if you could anticipate the cost of an inevitable lawsuit.
I can't anticipate the cost.
Okay.
All right, this is the first round of comments. Oh, Councilmember Field.
So I have two questions. So the figure to go, the rental license fee is, there's the flat fee and then there's the per unit fee. And it goes from $10 per unit to $100 per unit. And I agree that $10 is too low. That makes sense to raise the per unit fee. But I did some research on Google, spent several hours on Google, and also called some of these cities to confirm the exact per unit fees. Baltimore, Boston, Newark, Delaware, Philadelphia, Erie, Pennsylvania, Lancaster, PA, Pittsburgh, Hartford, and Boston. And that was just today. None of them have even close to a $100 per unit fee. I couldn't find, Phoenixville actually has, I believe, an $80 per unit fee. So where did the number, the $100 per unit fee come from? Because I also looked at, it was set at $10 in 2003 per unit. And so if the cost of inflation alone was taken into account, it would be about $18. So where does the $100 unit fee come from?
Well, I said earlier that we applied the Federal Reserve 30-year rental index to determine where rental rates are today. And then that resulted in the calculation on that was instead of $50, it came to $109.76 per first unit. So that's where we got it from, and we simply rounded it down to 100, and that's where the $100 fee came from.
Okay, so, all right. And the second question is, so can you clarify what you mean? So you mentioned that the business license fees, that something about doesn't change the exemptions for nonprofits, but
Yeah.
I just want to, when I read this, I want to understand exactly what it's saying. So in the 8th District, which I represent, there's at least 7 senior, low-income, subsidized senior housing buildings.
Mhm.
Most of them are large. All of them have over 50 units. As I understand it right now, they're paying about $800, $900 on the current structure. If this goes into effect, am I reading this wrong? That they will all be charged $5,000? It will
Are they
be a
nonprofit?
$5,000 fee?
Are they nonprofit?
Yes.
Oh, they're nonprofit, so they're exempt. But from this. So nonprofit, if you're a nonprofit entity, so I think earlier there was some discussion, there was a rental to elderly and, what are the two?
It was nonprofit and elder.
Low income. So and then the word nonprofit got added. So that's why we wanted to clarify today that nonprofits, as far as current city law, they must register for a business license, but they don't pay a license fee.
Okay, so I guess then.
And that's
sorry.
been changed in the legislation.
So I guess I need to figure out exactly what the definition of a nonprofit, the difference between nonprofit housing versus low-income housing or subsidized senior citizen housing.
Yeah, see,
But, because to me, as I understand it,
you're mushing it together.
all of the low-income subsidized senior housing buildings in the 8th district will see, a substantial increase to go from about 1,000 to 5,000.
Yeah.
As I read this.
Yeah, I can't make a blanket statement like that. We'd have to look at each one, and we'd be happy to give you an idea if you give us an example of one you're talking about. But, and again, I want to make it clear, if you said they were nonprofit, if they're nonprofit, they fall into the category where they apply for a business license, but they do not pay a business license fee.
Okay, so maybe we can talk about it offline, but this
Sure.
is, to me, this is a big, again, I believe that when I did my research and looked at all the other cities, the
Yeah.
fee should go up, and that's fair.
Right.
But the question of how much, and so this is a big issue that I need to clarify. You know,
Okay.
I need to see clarified, because it's a big jump to go from $1,000
Right.
to a $5,000 bill every year.
Well, again, that's your example, and we'd be happy to look at one if, to see if those numbers are accurate.
Okay.
Okay? And again, but I do want to leave and especially for the nonprofits that were a little concerned, they were concerned because they saw the term nonprofit being bandied about when we were discussing this legislation. And so we were on the phone with a few nonprofit housing providers on Friday to reassure them that, again, they'll still apply for a business license. They will not pay a fee. All right?
And I want to help direct the conversation,
Yeah,
Mr. Rago.
yeah.
So like, for example, Ministry of Caring, they're a nonprofit
Yes.
housing provider.
Correct.
They would be exempt
Right.
under this law.
Right. You know, Luther Towers is another one.
Okay,
They're exempt.
okay.
Can I clarify that? So you're telling me that Luther Towers will not see an increase? They-
Correct.
They will,
They don't pay. Now, they may pay there's a $10 per unit cost that's in there from a piece of legislation a few years ago. But they won't even pay that after this legislation goes through if council approves it.
when I read the bottom paragraph of page 3, that's not how I would interpret it.
Right.
We'll talk about that offline.
Yeah, we'd be happy to. Again, let's use as many examples as we can versus general statements, and be happy to look at that for you.
And Mr. Rago, to clarify, there are for-profit providers of housing.
Yes.
You have plenty that provide
Yeah.
Section 8 or other,
Sure.
other programs.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Mr. Chair, I had my hand up.
Yes. Ms. Council.
No, I'd just like to take time and thank the Finance Committee and working with the administration along with, Brett Taylor's department. As it's been stated, some of these fees haven't been even looked at for over at least 20 years. And right now, we have a deficit in the city of Wilmington. People are working from home, and we have to get some wages. We just don't want our city to go dry, and we don't want to raise taxes for the entire city of Wilmington right now for all of our residents. So we had to look at something. I'm not happy with all of it, but sometimes you gotta, weigh out some things. And just like I said, some of these fees haven't been looked at in even 20 years. So sometimes we get complacent and we're just used to some things. I've had discussions with some of my residents, and I just explained to them that we don't want to raise fees for the entire city, when at this point we just have to look at some of these fees that had to be adjusted. Like I said, all of it's not right, but sometimes you gotta take a little, pull a little, and it is what it is. That's part of our job. So I just like to thank you for taking the time, and that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Councilman.
All right. First round of questions, I have Councilmember Darby. Floor is yours. Okay, I'm not sure if she's having technical difficulties. Councilmember.
Hello?
Oh, yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. First round of questions.
Okay. Yes. So I had questions specifically similar to what Nathan was saying. So I understood already that nonprofits are exempt However, as Councilmember Johnson had stated, there are for-profits that provide affordable housing. Are they going to be a part of that exemption if they're a for-profit that provides affordable housing, such as Wilmington Housing Authority? There's a few different ones throughout the city that provide subsidized and public housing. Are they exempt from the rental dwelling fee, or are they a part of the cap? Because I see
Yeah.
that it's still capped at $10,000.
No, council, if I may?
Yes, yes, Mr. Rego.
Council member, the cap's going to be $5,000, so they are capped. The $10,120 cap, which was in the original legislation, has been eliminated. So now we're capped at 5,000.
Cap for who?
This will be for rental business owners that rent to low-income and senior citizen tenants.
So only for low income and seniors, so BP&G and those big developers won't be getting a break from this?
That's correct. There's no cap for the larger developers. There is no cap.
Okay, yeah, I must don't have the correct legislation. And then I had a question in regards to, I'm on the phone. I have questions in regards to the childcare. So a lot of their fees went up. I'm trying to find it on page 8, C, A, B, and C. So there was a hike in childcare fees, and right now childcare, especially in the city, they're struggling. And we know a lot of COVID funding is about to be cut off, or assistance that the state was giving for purchase of care coverage.
Yes.
And I know there's some other things in the works to help with daycares, but currently they're struggling. And to have this jump that they're having, I was wondering if you guys were able to work with negotiating the childcare piece.
Yeah, you're referring to, it's on a page here.
Page
but-
4.
Is it page 4? Okay, but I'm going to read from it. Home care or home daycare inspections. Now, this is from the fire marshal's office. Now, this is where this,
Daycare center is 120 to 200.
okay. Okay, there are two references here, so let me make sure I'm understanding what the council member is looking at. There's also the
Okay.
inspections by the fire marshal's office. Is it that one, or are you talking about, okay, non-professional services?
It's on page, yeah, on my packet I have, it's on page 8, it's C1, ABC.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's what I thought you were referring to, so let me go back to that. And what happened here is that there was no structure for the fire marshal's office, and so everyone understands, this is the safety of these children in these facilities each and every day. So it's important that the fire marshal's office has an understanding of the type of the configuration of these facilities, make sure that we have a record of the facilities so that we can get back in there quickly if we need to. And so what we did was, we just simply added structure, if you will, the home daycare, 1 to 6 children, and that's also for group homes and small facilities, that would be $50. For larger home daycare, that's 7 to 12 children, that would be $100. And then child care centers, or children care centers, it says here, would be $200. That's 12 or more children. So that's the structure that was added. There was none before. And quite frankly,
So,
it,
on the legislation,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, you go right ahead.
I would say on the legislation I have, I see a stricken out. It was $50 for daycare, group homes, or small facilities. So I'm not questioning the safety of children in that process happening, because it was happening before, but it was $50 for if you were a home daycare, a large daycare, or a child care center. It was just a flat rate of $50.
Right.
And then also, it went up for home daycare. It is not $50. I see it stricken out for $75. So did that
Yeah.
change in the new legislation?
Yeah, the rates.
Oh,
I-
so it's still $50 in the new one?
No, it's 75.
No, it's
Okay.
the rates I just read to you a moment ago. But let me walk through for just a moment how important this
You
is.
said 50, but
No. Well, the first one's 50. Oh, I'm sorry.
75.
Okay, I
No,
apologize.
the first one is 75.
You are correct. I'm sorry. On my version, it said 50, but it is 75. But if I can just walk you through this just a moment. This is not just our fire officials walking into a facility, staying for a few minutes, and then leaving. This is a full inspection of this facility. This is making sure that, there's a way in and out, safe in and out entrances for the children. So this is they go in and they spend time here. So if you're doing a larger facility, you're going to spend more time. And that's what Gabe Pabon did when he surveyed the fire departments, the paid fire departments that I spoke about earlier. I'm not sure if the council member heard that, but we did survey paid fire departments in order to get some sense of how to handle childcare facilities.
Okay, thank you. And there's one last thing.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Earlier, another council person stated that we were in the red or that we're not doing well in our budget. I also want to confirm that we have a balanced budget, right? And I wish I had my budget book with me. We are not in the negative. We're not in a deficit. And my question, my last question before the second round is, what services are going to improve if we're increasing fees and fines rates for people? Not to just, because the services we're offering now, a lot of people are complaining about, and now we're about to increase our services, and we still are not even up to date in 2023 with a lot of like how our applications are run or how we do systems is still very confusing to people and all over the place.
Right. Well, let me address your first comment about our budget picture. You are correct. It looks good today, but just give it about a year or so, and then we're all going to be faced with a crisis when it comes to our budget. And, you know, it's no secret that we've talked to the state about providing some assistance. But let me just share with you what the state does. If you go to a funding source, and by the way, this can apply to any nonprofit, any organization that goes out for a grant or whatever. One of the first things they're going to tell you is, we'd be happy to help you, but you got to show us some effort to help yourself. And so you all here this year on the Finance Committee, so you know this. And so I think we have people watching us here. The legislation before you is not necessarily for revenue raising, but it is to make sure, and there's one line, I just want to go back to what I said, government functions most effectively when it has sufficient revenue to which to provide services and programs. And you know, as council members, and we hear it from the public all the time, the council member just said, there are people complaining. If you have examples of what they're complaining about, council member, we'd be happy to look at that and see if we need to make some corrections. But this legislation,
Yes.
well, let me just finish this one thought. This legislation will make sure that all of these departments are funded sufficiently to provide the services that are outlined in this particular piece of legislation.
No, thank you for answering my questions. I have suggested stuff already, so I hope now, since you guys want to raise fees and fines on the community, that you'll listen to those suggestions that I'm getting from the community and actually apply them, like online registry, portal systems, electronic applications,
Yeah.
streamlining our L&I process. So I hope that you guys are being honest to your word right now, that you're willing to make those changes.
Yeah, council member, thank you. And I did address that in my last comment, that we understand that we need to make things more convenient for businesses and for consumers generally here in the city. So I believe we are listening, and we're trying to make those changes as quickly as possible.
All right, Councilmember Cabrera.
No, Bracy has her hand up.
No, you can go to
Oh.
prayer. You can go to prayer.
It's- Somebody's, okay.
Are we doing
All right, the
Bracy or
floor is yours. I was
Thank you,
hearing feedback.
Councilmember. Thank you, Councilman Chair. I want to go back to the rental registration fees. So when the initial research was done, and this was brought before me, David Sofrin, who worked in the mayor's office at that time, had brought examples of just in our nearby area of registration fees. Recently, Councilmember Darby and others had put together a conference or a town hall. The Homes Campaign and other people were members of it for the landlords. And these discussions were had in terms of these fees going up. So let me go back to the research. In Ellesmere, which is right next to Wilmington, we're looking at a registration fee of $200 per property. The research also showed that Claymont had a $150 registration fee, but not sure. Got to research that to make sure that still holds. Maybe they got rid of it. And even though Newcastle County doesn't charge, these other nearby vicinities do. Most recently, Councilmember Darby and I were on a call with the Commissioner of License and Inspections from Lancaster, a city who's similar in size, economic disparities, and about the same level. The poverty levels might be just off a little bit, but in terms of the size and what they have to deal with in Lancaster, it's very similar to Wilmington. Their registration fees are $250 per unit. At that town hall meeting, after speaking to the landlords, addressing their concerns, answering their questions, and explaining why we have to do this, because leadership is not easy. We have to make tough decisions to keep that budget stable, not just in today's budget, but tomorrow and the year after and the year after. Because things might be looking good now, but that might not be the case in 2 years with some of the expenditures that we expect. And some of them are personnel, for fire, police, etc., cost of living. So in those conversations with those landlords, I had a few of them come up and speak to me, and they said, Councilwoman, we're okay with the fee going up because we're in other areas and we pay a lot more. What we do want to see is exactly what Councilmember Darby just said. We want to see the customer service. We want to have the one-stop shopping portal where we can register our businesses. They don't want to ride up and down the elevators in the city-county building and take a day off from work. So these are the things that the administration has assured us that we're working on, that the finance director is working on. We brought these questions up during the budget process, and there is a portal and these things. So I was able to share that with them, and they're waiting with bated breath that this is going to move forward. And I thank you and the administration for listening to these concerns and taking these actions, because these are the things that concern us as we're trying to help our constituents. And it has been a long time since these fees have been raised, which makes it a little bit more painful, but it has to be done. It's responsible government. It's balancing a budget. I don't like the idea of making anyone having to pay more for anything, but for the longest time, Wilmington just went along to get along. Nobody wants to make the tough decisions. And then the time comes and it falls on the shoulders of those that are presently leading. So we have to step up our leadership and do what we need to do, as well as be listening to our constituents and cognizant, including the businesses that invest in our city. So that's what I wanted to add to that discussion in terms of the fees. Thank you, Chairman Johnson.
Thank you very much, Councilmember.
Councilmember.
And Councilmember Bracy, first round of questions.
Thank you. I don't have a question as much as a comment, and this probably could have waited till second round, but one of the things the Deputy Chief of Staff said was that government functions when there's significant revenue. $2 million that would be generated, or the estimated generation of $2 million through this legislation isn't significant revenue. It's $2 million in comparison to what our entire budget looks like for the city. And, you know, I'm not sure if that's a strong enough argument for me. I agree that we need to do something. I'm just not comfortable with the entire presentation. I appreciate the administration's willingness to work with us. Every time we've asked a question, if we've, you know, come back and said, can you run the numbers again? They have. But just to say that because, you know, this fee hasn't been increased since 1994 is not good enough for the constituents of the city of Wilmington. I think we really have to, you know, The professional and the non-professional business license fees in particular are going from $120 to $200 and from $180 to $300. And, you know, it just doesn't seem equitable in my opinion. I get it, and we've had this conversation, but I can't sit here and not at least express how I feel about this. As it's been stated by some of our colleagues, it's not perfect. We've been able to make some, you know, changes, and hopefully maybe there'll be some more tweaks to make this a little better. But the functioning piece has got to be essential to this. If we're doing this and it's the same lack of customer service, or, you know, we're not truly working towards automation, then we're doing this in vain. So that would be my first round. Thank you.
Very well. Now I'll turn it to members of the public. We do have members in person. We'll do that first. I have Mr. Jeff Sheraton. If you mind coming up, and you have 3 minutes. Be mindful of our rules in place, and also, you know, please state where you're from. And
Sure.
the floor is yours, sir.
My name is Jeff Sheraton. I'm the president of the Greater Wilmington Housing Providers and a city resident of the 1st District. Our organization represents over 100 landlords and several thousand units in your city. Wanted to, I guess, just address some of the concerns we have specifically with the proposed landlord fees. The first concern is, I guess, I want to talk about the reasoning for the increase. You know, I've spoke with several of you guys over the last weeks or so. We've heard, you know, lost tax revenue to employees working from home. We need to cover the cost of employee pensions, make up lost income parking tickets, all sorts of, I would say, legitimate reasons why the city needs to increase revenue. My concern is that instead of the city going to the general public of the city to get that revenue, which is the people receiving these services, we're now piling them on the backs of businesses, and specifically in our case, landlords. Landlords are looking at a absolutely ridiculous increase. Just to put it into perspective, if you own 3 properties, your fee is going to go from $120 to $300. That's a 150% increase. Someone like me, I have around 100 properties. My fee is going to go from $1,090 to $10,000, which is an 817% increase. If you think that's going to fly and rents aren't going to go up with it, you're out of your minds. I mean, we have to get that money from somewhere. The administration testified, you know, how they came up with these numbers. And they said for all other businesses, we looked at a 2% rate of inflation over the last 26 years. And I'm thinking in my head sitting back there, well, that makes sense. Why aren't, you know, $10, 2% over 26 years? You know, it might double, even come close to triple. But that's not the case. Instead of looking at that, they singled out landlords and they said, well, we're going to look at the amount rent has increased over 30 years. The rent we charge has nothing to do with our business license fee. Our business license fee we pay to the city is to cover services the city provides to us. We get a rental inspection, and we're now being promised a new online platform. We know what the rental inspection costs. On the city's website today, if you go on there, it says that if you fail your inspection and you need to get a reinspection, it's $25. We get an inspection every other year. That's $12.50 a year. How does that not make sense? I mean, I know there's going to be a cost for this new software, but I'm not thinking it's going to be about $90 per unit. So I would encourage you guys to really go back and think about this, because it's going to have a pretty big effect on rents in the city, not to mention new people wanting to invest in your city. I also wanted to touch briefly on the proposed new cap for low income and senior housing. On its face, no issue with it. My big concern is that low income and senior housing is not defined in the legislation, and it's left up to the administration to figure out. So what happens if I have some Section 8 tenants and some market tenants in my portfolio? Does that cap apply to me, or does it not? What if I rent to some seniors but some others? It's kind of a mixed bag with some questions that need to be answered. I'm also concerned about the administration's ability to even handle that. Currently now, you know, we mail in our rental licenses. Things get changed every year. They go up and down. But I mean, just today in the mail, I got a letter from the city saying that 21 of my properties weren't registered. And it was a little shocking to me because 19 of those properties had already been inspected by the city. So how does that make sense? Who's not doing their job? I mean, that's insane to me. Let's fix the system before we put more burden on it. And that's all I have for you guys. I really encourage you to try to do better than this.
Thank you, sir. There's a Tarina Batten.
Terrence.
Oh, Terrence, sorry.
Yeah.
I apologize. Terrence Batten. Floor
Good
is
evening,
yours, sir.
Chair and council members. My name's Terrence. I'm a property manager here in Greenzang. I manage, along with my co-manager, Wilmington Portfolio 1. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar or not. But, so I kind of just wanted to talk about the real estate license proposal and the increase to it. I mean, I believe it's pretty ridiculous. I mean, we would go from paying $2,100 a year to $20,000. I mean, and people like us, we have 200 units, so we could afford that, but that's just gonna go back on the tenants. I mean, in order for us to afford it, we're gonna have to raise the rents, you know, by at least maybe $100, $80, something like that. And that's just gonna ruin the community. I mean, there's people, I have tenants that can barely pay the rent as it is. So we're gonna have at least a double in evictions, at least a double. We're gonna have no lease renewals. There's gonna be a lot of people that's planning on moving out, you know, because it makes sense. Like a council member said earlier, that Ellesmere, you know, they pay 200, but I don't see super big developers out there. You know, we have a lot of developers in Wilmington. There's a lot of people that's trying to fix up the community, and I feel as though it's kind of counterintuitive to raise rates while people is trying to clean up the community and do it at a costly budget. I think that, you know, $100 per unit is pretty insane and pretty drastic. Like he said, like the councilman right here said, I mean, I believe that we could do an increase, but I mean, we're going up 700%, almost 600, 700% on our units. So I kind of just wanted to come up here and express my my strong point on it, because I believe that will drastically have an effect on the community. You know, and somebody like me that has I'm in touch with the community. I talk to tenants every day. We cut breaks, but at the end of the day, we can't do that if we're paying 700% extra at the end of the day. So, I mean, we're just gonna have a lot of evictions. You know, a lot of people in court, a lot of people that are just not gonna pay. And then there's also gonna be landlords that won't get registered. They're not gonna register their units. They're gonna say, you know, whatever, let the units go to, you know, pretty much let them fall, and then go in foreclosure and just kind of leave it alone. So, I mean, I believe that this would have a very big impact on our community and the people that live in it. And as I heard the speaker talk, I didn't hear him mention what impact it would have on the community. So I don't know if that was considered when proposing this new legislation, but I kind of just wanted to let everybody and let all the council members know that that would have a great impact on our community. And I believe that we should reconsider the increase of, you know, maybe like we're paying $10 now. If we could maybe stage it over 10 years for that 100% increase, I think that would be a lot better than to just hit us right now. Because I know my tenants will definitely feel the brunt of it. We'll be able to pay it, but we'll have to, the tenants will pay at the end of the day. So that's all I had to say. I appreciate you guys' time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Batten. Next in chambers, I have Mr. Frank Brevoort. Floor is yours, sir.
I'm Frank Brevoort. I'm a landlord. I have quite a few properties in the city of Wilmington. I pay almost $500 a year in business license fees, and that's going to go up close to $5,000. Now, what is fair? Fair is when you treat everybody equally. What is not fair is when you target one group and treat them unequally. That's what's happened here. Our rents have gone up 900%, tenfold, since 1994, 2% if I'm lucky. Maybe the last few years, a little bit more than that. But what about 2008, when we had the real estate drop and all of our rents dropped? For years, they dropped. Forget about that. Let's just talk about recent years when rents have gone up more than inflation. I'm back up to where the other businesses are. 70% increase? Yeah, maybe. 900%? My rents haven't gone up 900%. I will be happy to open my books and show you that's the case. I don't want the city to go dry. At the same time, I don't want to bear the burden of saving the city, because it's not going to be me. It is going to be the tenants. Ellesmere, $200. I got rid of my property in Ellesmere. A friend of mine says he's not going to buy in Ellesmere because of the fees, the annual inspections, the difficulty of dealing with the L&I. There's a reason why these fees are so high. And forget about Claymont. Claymont doesn't charge $150. Claymont doesn't even charge. It's part of Newcastle County. There is no good reason for we to be disparately picked on and targeted for a 900% increase. From $10 to $100, tenfold increase? Really? I think, to be fair, you should go back, you should not vote this out of committee, go back and reconsider and bring us in line with the other businesses. That, to me, is the only fair conclusion that you can come to. 70% means we go from $10 to $17. I don't care. Be disparate. Make us 100%. Let's go to $20 per unit. But $100 a unit, tenfold increase, that is not fair.
Thank you very much. Also in chambers, we have a Brittany Ray. Ray? Oh, yes, yes. I apologize. Okay, Mr. Ray, the floor is yours.
Hello. Hi,
Hello.
I'm Bitin Roy. I'm a local landlord, about 39 units in the city limit. So I am doing this business about 10 years. So I understand like a small increase we can able to absorb, but a drastic increase about $90 per unit is going to be directly passed on to the tenants. And all I want to make it, this is not the right time to go for such a drastic increase, because I know my tenants, so many of them are behind, and I have 8 cases just to deal with a small portfolio, all of non-payment of rent. And a lot of them are seniors, old people, they are on Section 8, still they are not able to pay their small portions. And last 2-3 years, we see huge rise because of inflation, cost of everything going up, wage going up, cost of repairs went up, supply went up. So now at this time, if you hammer another $100 per unit, that's not going to end up well. That's going to really increase the rent up. I try to keep my rent really low, and because I'm hands-on operator, so I can absorb lot of my cost. And I always increase my rent like $5, $8, $12 a year. But now the increase are like at least $50. But with this and other costs going up, it will be really big increase as other landlords shared. So all my thing is to tell, this is not the right time to bump it up by 900% or 800%. We can take small step at a time, like $15, $20, or $25, so that we are consistent with the economic scenario we are in. That's all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Roy. In chambers, we have Ms. Christian Willauer. Floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair and members of the committee. I just wanted to point out some council members, or I've heard it said tonight, that this has to be done. And I just wanted to remind the council that the budget is balanced without this. Like this extra $2 million that would be generated by this law is not part of the budget projections. And so, you have a balanced budget. It says that it predicts that that business license fees will remain the same. And then this law comes and would add $2 million. So this would be a $2 million surplus to the budget that you've currently considering. So also, I just wanted to say, I've heard tonight that you've been talking about the legislation for a year. And I was just, I like some of the things I heard about some of the changes that have been made, but they're super last minute, and it's really hard to digest. And it's really even hard to understand as a public and maybe as council. So, if it's been under consideration for a long time, I would just ask why all these changes at like the very last minute, and could, just take some more time to think about it. Like, don't don't pass it out of committee tonight. Like, take some time to understand what's been proposed by the administration or, by these changes, and then consider whether or not that goes far enough or if there need to be other changes. And then finally, these chart changes are a lot. I do have a small business. 181 is what I currently pay, and going up to 300 is a significant extra fee. And, in addition to small businesses, there are a lot of large businesses that are getting significant tax breaks, as part of promoting economic development. And I think it's great for the city to grow. I think it's absolutely important. But we have to remember, in addition to our large businesses, small businesses are also generating, jobs, services, and really contributing to the vitality of our community. So I would just ask that the city, in thinking about balancing where you're getting revenue, it absolutely makes sense to have a stable city. We all want a city that is like successful, but we got to make sure that we're not asking small businesses to carry that burden. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, shifting gears to online, we have online a Yehuda Angster. Ms. Angster?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, all right. All right, the floor is yours.
So first of all, I'd like to really say thank you to all the council members. I run a company that invests in real estate in New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and now Wilmington, Delaware, and we deal with a lot of municipalities. And it's always a hard task to balance a budget, to increase the safety and security of your city, and at the same time keep business owners happy. So I just want to really say thank you all for taking that into consideration, because I know it's not easy. With that in mind, I've heard from a few of the landlords, and they are correct. In the end, the tenants will certainly bear the burden, and that might increase the amount of evictions, and that also might unfortunately impact some of the constituents who vote as well, because these folks will see a difference in their increase in rents, and landlords will definitely inform everybody that it's due to an increase in business licensing. I mean, when you go to your tenant and you say, I have to increase 10%, 15%, and they complain, you're going to say, listen, here's the new legislation, go speak to your council member. This is why I have to increase your rent. So, the constituents will definitely be the recipients of the expense, and also will receive the wisdom that it came from the voting. But as a side note, we do a ton of adaptive reuse. We put up anywhere between 500 to 600 apartments a year across the East Coast in old mill houses, old office buildings, old warehouses. And many offices, not just in Wilmington, but across the country right now, are vacant. And the latest data says that they're going to continue to not just be vacant, but that vacancy is going to increase over the next few years because, folks are changing their lifestyle. And I think that a great approach to make Wilmington successful and continue to grow would be to look at the vacant office complexes and vacant office buildings and see how you can bring adaptive reuse and how you can attract business, as opposed to turning to current landlords and current owners and asking them to shift the burden to existing tenancies, right? So, I understand that it's a challenge. I think that the increase going up 900% is just exorbitant. We did a quick review of our portfolio. We don't have a single building in any city or state that pays as much as that per unit for business license. This would be the highest from all of the locations that we are in, and we're in quite a few. But I also think that it's a great opportunity for the city of Wilmington to say, how do we bring business to town, and how do we increase the value of our existing infrastructure, as opposed to maybe increasing the rental license on, the landlords. So, with that in mind, it's a lot that you have to balance, and we really respect and appreciate your time, and we really respect and appreciate all your hard work here, because it's not easy. So thank you for what you do, and thank you for working so hard for the city of Wilmington.
All right, thank you very much, sir. Also on Zoom, we have Miss Renee Burrell?
Hi, yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, ma'am. The
Okay.
floor is yours.
Thank you. A lot of what I'm going to say has already been said by the landlords that are currently there. While I agree that it's time that our fees are increased, like everyone has said, it just seems like the brunt of it is coming down on landlords. And that's really not fair. I am a small landlord and I have rental units in the city as well. My business license fee will go from $200 a year to $800 a year, 300% increase. And I have a very small portfolio, but I also rent to low income tenants. A lot of my tenants struggle to pay their rent. And we've also faced so many other increases with the water bills going up. One of the council members asked me, I actually pay the water bills for my properties. Some of my properties, I pay the entire water bill. Some of them, I pay a minimum water. And then for the tenants who have excess water, I bill them the excess water. But a lot of the times I would just eat that and pay it myself because I know a lot of my tenants struggle already. But with all the fees going up between the water bills, property taxes, maintenance, supplies, insurance, everything is going up. I have no choice but to start increasing rents, which I have. And if this passes and my fees continue to increase, I'm going to have to increase my fees even more. My tenants are already struggling. And I also come from a different perspective as a real estate agent. I see people looking for rentals. It's very hard to find a rental nowadays. And if people can't afford to stay where they currently are and have to move, a lot of them don't have anywhere to go because I sell houses, I help people rent houses, and I actually feel more sorry for the renters than buyers. It's harder for renters right now than buyers. I really think the city needs to reevaluate this. I don't think it's fair. The small landlords would have to pay more for their business license than the banks. Bank of America and Chase. Small landlords would have to pay more than them, and they make millions of dollars a year. I don't understand why we're being singled out and treated more harshly when we provide the majority of the affordable housing in the city. I just ask that City Council and this committee seriously reconsider how much they're looking to raise the business license for small landlords. Look at what we do add to the city, the value that we do bring, and try to make that increase reasonable, not unreasonable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, that's everybody I believe we have online. I'll turn it back to council members for final questions and comments. Councilmember Spadola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. After we met with the administration, two or three of us on council, the one strong feeling we had was that, we all agree that the fees need to be increased. But the one thing we felt strongly about was we should do it over a set time frame so businesses can plan and they have a schedule, similar to how the minimum wage was increased in Delaware to $15. I think it's getting there in 2026. I still haven't gotten a good answer from the administration why we can't do that. So can you elaborate, please?
We're happy to, again, talk. We've been talking for probably months about this. So
Yeah, and I asked this question 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it was.
I don't know if you, maybe, did you ask it of me?
answer.
I'm not sure if you asked it of me, but I don't remember hearing that.
I believe we have Chief of Staff Washington. Can you shed some light on this, the question about the aspect of a phased-in approach?
Well, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
The bottom line is that our 5-year projection is going to be in a significant deficit standing, which is not going to be a phased-in situation. We're going to face a significant deficit. And that's either by, you remedy that by the revenues that you have coming in. That's either property taxes or the fees that we're speaking of today. So phasing it in is not going to really address the problem that we have that's going to come down the pike later on.
Sure, but if we separate out the landlord rental fees, because those have the most draconian increase, a couple 100% as opposed to just doubling. So specifically with those fees, if only those fees, why can't we raise those over a schedule?
Well, you're giving me some scenarios that I'm not prepared to address at this moment. But what I will say is that we've given deference to those landlords that are housing low-income individuals. So the seniors and the low-income housing, they're getting the biggest break. They're getting capped off. Everybody else, there's no cap.
May I?
Yes, please.
Also, in terms of, I think an astute point that was brought up was low income is not defined in here. If a landlord owns 100 units and 10 are low income, what would their fee situation look like?
It's probably defined by something like Section 8 or something if they're on a Section 8 certificate.
But I mean, is it just the 10 properties exempt, or is their entire portfolio exempt because they are a low-income housing provider?
Say that again, is what, exempt 10
If somebody,
properties?
let me use a better example. If somebody has 100 units, 90 are Section 8, 10 are market rate, are the 100 exempt from the fee, or just the 90?
The ones that are low income will have the cap. The other ones that are market rate, they will have to pay.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Field.
So I agree the per unit fee of $10 per unit is low in comparison to other cities in the Northeast USA. It is reasonable to increase it, and perhaps even, I would say, responsible to increase it. But $100 per unit is too high, and it is significantly higher than the competitors, comparatively to other cities in the Northeast US. And it is the per unit fee that's the most important thing, because that's where the fees rack up. So that being said, I will be voting yes to advance this out of the committee with the understanding that this isn't the final number on the per unit fee, and that we will work together to come up with something that is competitive regionally. Thanks.
All right. If there's no other comments or questions, I understand, and we've heard everyone. Oh. Councilmember McCoy, floor is yours first. Sorry, I missed you.
Thank you. I was wondering if you was going to recognize me. Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you so much for all those who did come out. I did receive a few emails and tried to answer those that I could, talking about where we were when it comes to the increase. I do want to make certain that people were aware that this is something that we had brought up last session, and that it was made aware, we were made aware at that time that, oh, this only is falling on the landlords. What about all the other business licenses? And it looks like they went back to the drawing board to make certain that the increase did not just encompass the business license for the landlords. So that is one thing. So it now includes everyone. I do understand, because I've had a few conversations, and I do understand that people are looking at this like, whoa, why is it so heavy on us? When I had these conversations, I actually made the suggestion. I said, okay, we need to see an increase here. And a lot of people did understand that an increase was needed, because it's been about 20 years and people are still at $10 a unit. But no one actually can really give a suggestion on where it should be. So I guess they've left it up to the city's administration and council to kind of state where we think it should be. And it looks like administration says this is where we want to be at. Without any real guidance or whatever, and looking at where we need to be at revenue-wise, this is the number that we've come up with. And I just wanted to make certain that people were aware, like this number came from, it did not just appear magically. They're looking at how much they want to increase, funds in our revenue, because we do see this cliff, quote unquote, that they're discussing, and that we will look at in the next 5 years. So, oops, I'm so sick. Look,
Vice, thank you very much.
I'm sorry, my husband's phone started ringing. I'm sorry. So,
are you still there?
All I just wanted to state was, just wanted to finish up and state that, I just want to thank those landlords who are actually out there, who are paying their renters' water bills, because that is a big thing. We look at landlords who, yes, one of them stated like, oh, 2008 we went through a dip, but now we're finally starting to recover. These amounts that they're paying now have been since 2003. They've stayed the same, and we've watched the landlords the increase in rent go up unprovoked. We haven't done anything, but they're steadily climbing. So I'm like, so they're reacting to what's going on in inflation, but yeah, we're not supposed to. And I just want to make certain that people are aware of how we're trying to do business as well. We're not trying to take it out on anybody. We're just trying to make certain that we adjust to the time as they are. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Chair, I can't find my hand. This is Councilmember Cabrera.
Okay, I have Vice Chair Harley first, and then I believe you're next.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to ask Mr. Rago, you did a good job with explaining how we came up with that amount for the landlords. I guess my question to you is this: how did we determine the amount for all the other business license? Because I think to me it sounds like that's where the bone of contention seems to be with this whole topic, is that we came out in one place with one area, but we haven't explained how we came up with the others. Could you talk a little bit about that, Mr. Rago?
Sure. Let me go over it again. The land use and L&I fees were last increased in 2014. We used a conservative rate of 2% inflation over 6 years. So that covers the period 2014 through 2020. We took it back to 2020, not 2023. So that's land use and L&I fees. We thought that was a reasonable 2% increase. Business license fees, we used that's also a conservative rate of 2% over 26 years. The last time they were increased was 1994. So that's the period 1994 to 2020. And then finally, the fire marshal fees, they had not been updated for varying periods of time. So Fire Marshal Gabriel Papon, he performed a comparison of rates in other cities that have paid fire departments. And these are comparable cities, comparable fees. The cities include Reading, Pennsylvania, Alexandria, Virginia, Durham, North Carolina, Jacksonville, Florida, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and also Springfield, Massachusetts.
Thank you. So that's the benchmarking that you did
Sure.
for the other business license. So can you just repeat it one more time in terms of how you came up with the fees for the landlords dealing with the Federal Reserves?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
So we applied the Federal Reserve's 30-year rental index to determine the rate of inflation when it comes to rental fees. And that resulted in an increase. It went from $50 first unit to $109.76. So we rounded it off to 100. And then we also converted from this multi-tier process we were using to a flat rate per unit. So that's how we handled the business license fees for rental.
Thank you. And as I mentioned, it wasn't clear, I don't think, to the public how these other fees, how we came up with the other fees.
Right.
However, we did talk about how the fees came about for the landlord. So I definitely got a couple questions as to how those other fees came about.
Okay, thank you, council member.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have.
Thank you. And now, Councilmember Cabrera, if you're still there.
Yes, I'm still here.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you
Floor
for
is
allowing me to
yours, ma'am.
speak. Okay, so a couple points that I want to make. Number one, as a business owner myself, I do believe that I have my business expenses, and when I pay my accountant to do my taxes, it's a tax deduction. So any improvements in anything that anybody is a property owner that they have, including the fees that they have to pay, which is the cost of doing business, it's a tax deduction. So that's something that no one has addressed in their conversations. And as you mentioned, the rents have gone up. The rents went up even during COVID, and there were ARPA funding and relief that many of these landlords and business owners were able to receive, in spite, of all the challenges that they also had to deal with, because they are business owners. They do invest in our city, and I do respect that. And we do want to have good landlords in our city. And right now, there are still a lot of companies and people wanting to buy in our city, while we're really trying to work hard to turn a lot of those people into homeowners so that they become the buyers versus the investors. But we need a combination of both. With that said, when you do the math, $100 per unit is $8 a month. For the landlords that are threatening to raise the rent, you know, this meeting is recorded. I mean, how does that sound? That you're going to go and raise rents substantially and people are now not going to be able to pay and they're going to get evicted over $8 when people will pull up to a Wawa and pay $1.99 for a bottle of water, and a coffee nowadays is about $4 a cup. I mean, listen to how that sounds, that you're threatening to raise the rents because the cost of business has gone up by $8 a month and it's a tax deduction. So difficult decisions have to be made. And as far as what do you get city services, because if you own less than 4 units, you get trash pickup, you get special pickup, you get street cleaning, you get a paid police department and a paid fire department that comes to you. Our inspectors spend more time in these rental units, especially the buildings that house multiple units, and that's a cost of labor. So when the math was done, it was also taking into account the amount of labor and the fact that we are beefing up our license and inspection department so we can be more efficient, which is one of the #1 complaints that we heard from you and others. So these are the points that I want to make. If you don't think this pains me, it pains me terribly. I have a knot in my stomach just even thinking about this. These are hard decisions. They're unpleasant decisions. But for 20-some years, these fees have not gone up and the rents have gone up, as Councilmember McCoy so eloquently pointed out. So I, for one, am in favor and will continue to be in favor. And I'm willing to work with anyone. I'm willing to compromise. But the reality check is here and we have to plan for the future. We also have a police and fire department that is underpaid compared to all the other departments in the nearby areas and nearby vicinities. And they, even right here in Delaware, and they are now at the negotiation table wanting to get an increase. How are we going to pay the bills if we don't find a way? So that's the last point that I want to make, because I know you have many other items on your agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I think we heard a lot of great conversation tonight. And, you know, just let everyone know I definitely support voting inside of committee and moving this forward simply because of this. I think, you know, part of my job is to give the big picture of what we're moving for and striving for in Wilmington. And I think, you know, people can look at the budget and say, well, it's balanced. The budget presented by the administration was a no-frills budget, had no reinvestment in the community, or very little. Well, we've now worked over the past few months to have unprecedented investment. We see on the agenda tonight, there's a water assistance fund. We have increased money to the land bank and neighborhood stabilization, millions of dollars. So it wasn't just, we're taking this to, stuff the city coffers. The thing is, we're taking this to offer this, the services we need that are necessary in the city, but also unprecedented investment in affordable housing and neighborhood stabilization. That's been a theme you've seen over the past few years, and we can't stay away from that theme. And by us making the neighborhood safer, investing in L&I, more inspectors, that increases the investment of the landlords, who we just heard about. So I think Councilmember Cabrera put it right, $8 a month. If you're going to raise rent, then it's going to raise either way. But at the end of the day, there's investors who are lined up right around the corner who are investing in this world-class city. We have done the hard things, the shared sacrifice. Last year, the past 2 years, it was homeowners who had their property taxes increase. We had to look at that. We're looking at our business community. We're in negotiations right now with the state, and we actually hopefully will have good news soon with significant investment from the state. So we're looking at all things. So it's not, I know the landlords feel like they're singled out, but if you look at the full spectrum, is shared sacrifice, everyone involved to make it better in Wilmington. And we are in the top 10 places or top 20 places, the places to go in America. We have a place that we want you to invest in. And we're going to stay on administration about investing in services, the one-stop shop. I'm a business owner as well. I get it. We need to be more nimble as a city. And so I'm here to work with the landlords, Councilmember Cabrera, Councilmember Darby, Councilmember White. We were at that town hall, and we continue to work with the landlords to make sure that you can receive returns on your investment, okay? So, best believe this council. I don't know about past councils, but we don't just say it. We walk the walk. So any monies that we're taking, or that is going to be raised, is going right back in the community. So that's essentially where we're at. And, you know, again, we're not at final numbers yet. You know, this is the period right now. So there's still a ways away till we actually do the final vote. So please let us know if it's not $100, maybe it's 80. I don't know. You know, there's a way we can all talk. All right. So I appreciate everyone's input, everyone being engaged. Thank you. And with that, I will ask for a roll call. I will ask for a motion to vote ordinance 20, substitute 1 to ordinance 23-014 out of committee to full council for a vote. Okay. Okay. All right. And actually, I do have one more comment, actually. In regard.
Excuse me. Point of order, you just asked, call for the motion.
I'm withdrawing that at this
Okay,
time.
go ahead.
I wanted to make one more comment, just a point of clarity. Again, the balanced budget, what we look at is the revised budget is going to be online, or should be online now. So that is online. We can certainly, again, we have a lot of investments in our neighborhood, so just please keep that in mind. And also, just again, this process, just to kind of give a roadmap. So, you know, if this passes, once this passes, in terms of the implementation, I know there's a landlord engagement lab. There's a lot of entities working on this, and so we continue to be engaged with those entities, because as Councilmember Darby said, the investment in the software, the investment in the resources for the landlords is very important to this council. So that essentially is, you know, where we're at in terms of big picture, and in terms of other things related to the investments in neighborhood. Again, please keep in mind that everything works in tandem. So we need to pass this in order to get to the bigger picture of the investments in our neighborhood. And I think the other thing I did hear about was the legal aspect of this. Again, I've been assured by law department that we do believe we are on firm footing. This is a reasonable fee. It's not unreasonable. And so, you know, again, if you know, that is what the court's for, if that's what it gets to, but I believe this is reasonable and valid on its face. As, again, as Councilmember McCoy noted, this is not only an increase on landlords, it also has increase on other businesses as well. So again, shared sacrifice. And this also, I had a few other notes regarding the low-income definition. That is something that is well noted, and that thank you for that being picked up. I think we can work on that piece in trying to define, because I did notice, I don't know if it's another section of the code, but we need, we should define that, because I think it is the situation we talked about with Section 8 housing and other low-income housing. We do need to define clearly for the landlord, so you know. And I believe that was the only other note that I had. So I did have the information about that. And again, any information not provided today, Ms. Bassnight is tracking it and is following up. All right, and at this time, I'll ask for a roll call vote. Well, at this time, I'll move substitute 1 to ordinance 23-014 out of committee to full council for a vote.
So move.
Is there a second? All right.
Second.
It's been properly moved and second to move substitute 1 to ordinance 23-014 to full council for a vote. All right. I'm going to do a roll call. Vice Chair Hartley,
Yes.
Councilmember Field,
Yes.
Councilmember Oliver,
Yes.
Councilmember Spadola,
Yes.
Councilmember Bracy. Yes, this to move out. Okay. Council President Congo, you still on the line?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. And my vote is a yes as well. Again, this is just a procedural thing. It will move to full council for a vote. But again, we are still listening, so please let everyone know that this is there's still more work to do. So thank you very much. All right. and
Mr.
if-
Chair,
Yes.
I do have a question. When is this set to go before full council? Because there are still a lot of unanswered questions, and I think more conversation. Is there a date yet?
I believe we have the date of May 18th. Council President.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, very well. And that ordinance will be on the council agenda. Again, moving down to the agenda, just as a housekeeping matter, ordinance to amend Chapter 37 regarding parking violations that is being held by the sponsor right now. So that will not be moving forward. It'll be placed on this soon-to-be-announced agenda. All right, next is an ordinance to amend Chapter 45 of the City Code to establish a water assistance fund. Is there anyone from the administration that's here to speak on that item? Or, I believe we do have Black and Veatch on, but as a matter, I just wanted to say this is something that has been a long time coming. I broached the subject with the administration probably years ago, and it never really got legs. But for me, this was a result of the understanding that we heard from the community that water is a right, and you need to make it affordable. And what we saw during COVID with CARES Act is that funds were being used for the low-income residents, the seniors. And Councilmember Oliver can attest, I know the 3rd District has used it quite a bit, and it's helped, it's been invaluable. So for us, it's establishing it permanent. So it's basically codifying what we've already been doing the past 2 years, where if you can't truly afford water, we're going to make sure that you can have clean water in your home. And there's no more water shutoffs. Now, the policy of this program still will need to be worked out. So I have received questions about how often can you apply, those kind of things. Would it be at a website? That is to be announced. I think the guidelines will be similar to the CARES Act, because I don't believe there was a limit to the CARES Act. But again, Finance Director Taylor may be able to clarify that. But essentially, this is something where we want people who are truly in need. We don't want the same, because I believe some cities have experienced where the same people are applying and time and time again, and only ones using the fund. That's not the intent. The intent is to help those who are in need. And if someone is needing to apply multiple times, as a city, we have to be smart enough to say, why does this person keep applying? Why is this person? Is there mental health issues? Do they need assistant care at home? Is there some reason that they keep falling behind? So that's just, what we have to try to figure out. So that will be the policy point. So if this ordinance does pass, which I hope it has the support of all of the council, then, setting up the program or how often you can apply those things, that will need to go through the procedure and be voted on. So I just want to let everyone know that those questions still will be answered in the near future. And is there anyone from the administration, Chief of Staff Washington or Finance Director Taylor?
Well, actually, this was your baby, so we were looking for you to go ahead and talk it through. I don't know.
Well, and I guess the question about the CARES Act, is there limits? And I don't know if you have the answer, Director Taylor, limits to how often somebody can apply under the current program?
Currently, we have no rule about how many times that they can apply. I think that the sentiment has been that we should probably restrict it. That way you don't have repeat offenders. People who will get their previous delinquencies satisfied and then not pay and then come back and keep coming back. We're going to set that up. As you know, we've discussed, we're going to be setting a set of rules surrounding how we administer the program. Those rules will be meted out in, amongst us and on the administrative board, so we can set up some limits to that kind of repeat application.
Okay, and to clarify as well, I believe the model has been you can actually be current, so you don't have to be behind as well. You just have to show financial need.
Well, it's two different objectives. The previous program, the UAP program that's in place now, not with this new $250,000, was always to get people to get caught up. So we had delinquencies, we were paying down people's delinquencies. Going forward, and you'll hear this from Black and Veatch, is that creates an incentive not to pay your bill and you just kind of wait. So we really do have to change how we did that. The purpose is, as to our current plan where we were providing assistance for delinquencies, was because we had the CARES Act, because we had LIWOP money, which is the Low Income Housing Water Assistance Program from the state, and ARPA money, that we wanted to get on the street fast because of COVID. And that program certainly should be revisited. We should be moving forward, looking at a much more progressive plan, one that doesn't disincentivize people to pay, right? And one that we will, have more rigor in terms of who meets the criteria. But we'll meet all that out with you as we develop the policies and procedures.
Okay, and as a point of clarity as well, I believe the structure is a setup so that if the funds are expended, it can be replenished yearly.
Oh, yes, it'll be a cumulative effect.
Okay.
Well, although, we're gonna try our best to get it out on the street. That's the whole point.
Very well. All right. Any comments from council? Councilmember Oliver?
Sure. First, I'd like to commend you, Councilman Johnson. I know you've been working on this for a while. You've been talking about it for a while. I'm glad just to to come to tuition. This is great for families in the city of Wilmington who need some assistance with water. As Mr. Brett stated, that we do have a program, but this would be an ongoing program for the residents of the city of Wilmington. And I know with Catholic Charities, just taking people out there, they normally get to use it twice a year, sometime in the winter or the summer, so it's not repeated. And we said offenders, I don't think that was the right
I'm
word
sorry,
to use.
yeah.
Because I'm like, what is he talking about offenders? These are people who need some help.
My apologies.
But
That was not
that's
what I
okay.
meant.
But I think overall it's a great program. I'm glad to be a sponsor. And I know the individuals in the 3rd District have really got a lot of help from our Finance Department, Mr. Brett. And I see them, they're very excited. And to your team, kudos to your department. Thanks again, Chris. That's all.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilmember Spadola?
Thank you. I was just looking at how this will be funded. It says the amount of funding for each year's water assistance program shall be an amount that is no less than 1% of such fiscal year's water sewer fund. So does that mean that at a minimum annually 1% of the overall sewer water fund will be going into this? And what is that number in real terms? Yeah, what is that number in real terms first?
I believe we have Black and Veatch on the line as well, who's a consultant for the city. I believe that is no less than 1%. So we're setting a minimum threshold. So I forget the total numbers. We've had a lot of budget numbers, but the total water sewer.
I could tell you in a
fund
minute if, but I'm looking for the language.
Yeah, I don't see that language in there.
Yeah, there she is. Kelly's on that.
Yes, Commissioner
I thought-
Williams?
Right, so it's an amount for no less than 1% of the fiscal year's water sewer fund operation and maintenance
Right.
reserve.
That's what,
So
I understand.
that reserve is actually 17% of the overall budget. And what that means in real terms and real dollars is about $125,000. Now that number fluctuates year after year. It'll go up every time there's a rate increase, but it's about $125,000 this year. But just as a note, in this year's rate process, we had already budgeted $250,000 to be part of the assistance program. So this bill is actually, permanently codifying a little less than what we had already budgeted. But it's an important step in the right direction to actually put in writing that we're moving forward with a permanent program.
Yes, Councilmember.
Thank you. So there's no there's no maximum though. 'Cause
Correct,
my
right.
mind immediately goes to a dark place in the sense that not this administration, but a future administration come an election year, and they're thinking, how can we get some votes? Let's not do 1%. Let's do 10%. We'll put, $1 million into this fund. We'll pay everybody's water bill. We'll coast into reelection. Are there any safeguards? Coast. That was a good that was a dad joke actually on water. Got it. But are there any to me, if I'm reading this legislation correctly, there are no safeguards though into an administration saying let's put $3 million into this, other than the budget approval process. Am I right?
It's at least 1%, which means that if it changes, it will have to be changed by a vote of council.
Okay.
It have to be amended.
I am curious if, and we don't have to hash this out right now, but if you would be interested in a good faith amendment where we did put a cap in there, a percentage cap, because we have a minimum of no less than 1%. And could we talk about doing a maximum cap?
We can maybe talk offline. I think we would have to talk to the Black and Beach, frankly, as to how that would work, but something we can talk about. I can't say really I think the floor is the best, and I think we do have safeguards to the budget, but we can talk offline about that. Thank you. Any other comments on council in chamber? All right, anybody on Zoom? Marshall, do we? Oh, okay.
Councilmember Darby?
Councilmember Darby, yep, the floor is yours.
Yes, so I am definitely in support of establishing a permanent water utility assistance program. However, I think that we all should also at the same time be working on the issue to why people even need to apply to a utility assistance program, and we have not addressed that. I have recommended an assessment to happen where we can look at how we can make water billing more affordable. We know that 1 in 3 water users, residential users, are not able to pay. We know that there are water shutoff notices that City Council that we get 96 hours. We know that people's waters are getting cut off. They're getting the notices, and there are, I forgot the number, I don't have it in front of me, but there are a whole bunch of the accounts that are considered delinquent. So we know there's a population who cannot afford it. So I think this is great. It's good in concept, but it's not addressing the affordability issue. This is not going to make a bill more affordable for someone. This is just going to help someone be able to get on a payment plan. Because if I'm $3,000 in debt, they're going to pay the so-called $1,500, and I still have to come up with the $1,500, and they'll put me on a payment plan. And one of the issues is the payment plans. A lot of people are getting on payment plans because they're like, I need to keep my water on, so I'm going to say whatever and that I can afford whatever. And they're getting payment plans that they're not able to afford, and then they default and then go back into a whole nother issue. So it's this continuous cycle of issues of affordability. So this is not addressing affordability. This is addressing ways to just help someone pay their bill a little bit, which is also good, right? I got water bill assistance before. I got electric bill assistance, and it helped me. But also understanding that the payment plan could set people and have and will, in that high number, set people back. Also, with this piece of legislation, I think it needs to be, before it goes to the administration and gets passed and goes to the admin board or whatever, it needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. There are so many questions and vagueness. The point that it's called a permanent water utility assistance program, and we're not putting that it's residential, is an issue for me because commercials already don't get water shutoffs, right? And how much money are we losing by not cutting commercial off? So we give commercials exemptions and breaks on water shutoff, but everyday people who just can't afford it, and they're not offenders, they're not criminals, they're people who just can't afford their bill, who's going through hard times or have limited income, and they're just not able to afford it. And we're giving breaks to them. So I'm just hoping that this legislation, because it's so vague, there's so many questions I have in regards to how this is going to be implemented. In regards to protecting renters is not in here. What do you mean when you say low income
Are we going to be using the qualifications of SNAP, TANF, 300 FPL? Like, there's no, this legislation, I think, is too vague and open, and it has a lot of issues for me to say that this is going to be beneficial. But I think it's great to codify it. It's good. I still don't understand why $1,500. What does it mean to be delinquent? There's so many questions that I have about this piece of legislation in regards to how we're going to implement and what it means to have this water utility assistance program. So I just wanted to put that out there, that the concept, the idea of codifying it, yes, great. But the idea of not looking at affordability, because this does not address affordability. This just helps people who are behind when we should be working on making sure they don't get behind in the first place. Thank you.
Very well. Anyone else on Zoom? All right.
I have my hand up, Councilman.
Okay. Councilmember
Johnson.
Cabrera, the floor is yours.
Yes, first I want to commend the administration for coming up with this because they listened to our concerns. And what I want the constituents to hear is that many of the people who were in this meeting earlier, if they're still there, that we're also hearing your concerns about, first it was the ARPA money was there to help people. And then when that ran out, there was concerns about people getting their water cut off. So more money got put into that. The administration has continued to fund it. We kept hearing the concerns about the water and, we want water. I mean, you need water in a home. I mean, you got kids. I mean, come on, it's hard. It's hard to be without water. We're not going to disagree that here. So, yes, I was so happy to hear that the administration said, you know what, you're right. This is working out. We're able to help people that can apply for this fund. And there's always the payment arrangements. This goes beyond payment arrangements. There really is no reason for anyone to get their water shut off if they make a phone call. The city is far more lenient now than it was back in the days when I was having a hard time paying my water bills. Well, I come from a place, and I'm not even gonna lie, I had my water cut off, okay? So I'm gonna put it out there. My water was cut off back in the day. So I can feel the pain. I know what that is like. And they'll condemn you too. And then you got to leave your home if you don't get it turned on. So I've lived through this nightmare. So affordability. I look at the affordability of water in Wilmington compared to all the neighboring cities. So if somebody leaves and moves outside of the city and goes to live in Newcastle or anywhere else, and they have to pay for water because their landlord doesn't pay for it, they're going to pay more for that water than in the city. Where are they going to go to get any cheaper water than Wilmington? So I'm putting that out there. I don't understand why people think that the water is different than what you pay for electric and heat. Delmarva has raised their rates so many times. These people are racking in the big dollars. These are big utility companies. I don't hear anybody calling them out. Like, are people down at the state or they at the Public Utility Commission meeting asking them why they're charging what they're charging and can they lower their rates? I don't understand. It's water. We got to pay for it. It's a utility. We use it, we pay for it. We want to have good water in Wilmington. We don't want to have the issues with lead and all these problems that we read about in the paper in other areas. Tell me where you can find cheaper water than Wilmington, because you can't. So you're going to live in the city. You're going to have cheaper rates in the city. And I'm sorry that landlords aren't paying for it, but there's a reason for that too. Maybe because people were being wasteful. So maybe folks need to learn how to better manage water usage in their homes, make sure there's not a leak. And the city is working with you. We will take a payment arrangement. We have the Public Utility Fund. I agree with Councilmember Darby. Let's get more specific with the fund. But let's be thankful we have it and it's going to be permanent. And it's something that is a resource for the community. But come on, folks. It's like we still have to run the business. We still have to run the wastewater treatment plant. We still have to pay employees. The water, for us to manage the water, isn't free. So there has to be a cost. And we got to stabilize the water, the fund. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Very well said. All right. I'm going to open up to the floor for public comments. Anyone in chambers? All right. Anyone on Zoom? Okay. All right. Turning it back again. Very well said. Councilmember Cabrera, I think, summed it up the best. Again, the processes and policies, the application page, all that needs to be after this hopefully passes. We just need to establish the funds to set up the framework so we actually can put the money in year after year. and that this will, hopefully this is something generations from now, they'll say, wow, I can't believe this at one time was not done, water assistance. But until 2-3 years ago, it was not. So here we are. So this time I will entertain a motion to move ordinance to amend Chapter 45 to full council for a vote.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The ordinance will be on the agenda. Ordinance 23-19 will be on the agenda for the May 18th City Council meeting. Thank you very much. And lastly, the last ordinance is to amend Chapter 45 related to the Water Sewer Fund. This is ordinance -23020. This is another really housekeeping ordinance. This is to take the politics out of water rates. Since I've been on council, I notice every year it's like, the debate is, what the water rate's going to be. And we have a citizen advisory council, and then we have Black and Veatch who kind of help us do our projections. But, in the past, looking historically, some years it was 0%, then it was 12% some years. Then, it was very unpredictable, and it was, if it was election year, then it's not going to rate. It was sickening. And so for me, is again, taking the politics out of this process. We need to invest in our infrastructure. We need to invest in our clean water, first and foremost. And so, incremental increases with the assistance, I believe is a win-win for everybody, a win-win for the whole community. And, we can keep doubling down so that we don't have to vote every year about the water rates. We can just set it every 3 years going forward, and then, that's it. And every 3 years you can debate it. But there's also a safety valve in here so that if, say something happens, a catastrophic incident, we actually can go back and vote on increasing it more or decreasing it. But this is really setting the guardrails so year after year, in these budget presentations, you don't even have to hear about the water sewer fund. So again, we take the politics out of it, and that's our goal, is to be in, at least with our council session 108, is being as transparent as possible. And so, I'm being transparent that it was just a political game as to why this became an issue. This should be a non-starter. We need to invest in our clean water, and you have to raise the incremental because the costs go up every single year, chemicals, everything. So this is something we have to do, and it's something we should get used to doing. So with that, I believe we do have, is Black and Veatch on the line? I believe they may have some insight about a 3-year plan. Prabha?
Sure.
Yes.
Good evening, Chairperson of the committee and the council members and Commissioner Kelly and Chief of Staff. Good evening to you all and the Finance Director. I am Prabha Kumar from Black and Veatch. Regarding the multi-year rates, just to give a perspective, this is something that many municipalities do consider. Some do enact. And the benefits are that it helps for stability for the water sewer utility to know what the revenue stream is going to be given the projections. And the multi-year rate projections, just to let you all know, is that it is based on due diligence analysis and projections of all costs as we presented to the council a few weeks ago. So it is not just based on any kind of just an arbitrary assumption. It is based on the financial diligence of projecting what the revenues are and the revenue requirements are over the next 5 years. And also the time as far as Wilmington is concerned, this is actually a good time to consider also because it's not only forward looking, but if you look at historically, the rates that were set, the projections based on which the administration, the council acted, and then when you go back and look, how did those projections hold up? Did you over-recover from customers? Did you under-recover? Did the revenue that you actually recovered, did it align with how the expenditures actually happened? And with the expenditure projections, both for operations and maintenance cost and capital, did those projections come in line with what was actually projected? We find now it is holding up really well. So that really is what gives a greater confidence at the current time to now move in the direction of having 3 rate increases or whatever the ordinances whatever the council decision is, to move in that direction. And there are others who have done, just to give you some sense of neighbors who have done that in Harford County, Maryland. They went through the same process of diligent financial planning, and through the council action, they were able to pass a series of 5 increases that they did in 2016. And then in 2020, they came back and they looked at, okay, we passed 5 increases. How are the revenue projections versus the revenue requirements, the expenditures that were projected? How were they aligning? And they found it was aligning pretty well. And therefore, that then gave them the confidence to go do a next 5-year study. And Harford County in 2021 passed the rate increases for the next 5 years. So there are precedents in how utilities are doing this, really driven by more reliable financial plan projections.
Thank you very much, Prabha. And is it my understanding that based on the projections from Black and Veatch, this fiscal year be the 5.7% next fiscal year, and then 5.8% next fiscal year, and then total bill impact would be $3.70 the first year, $3.91 for fiscal year 2025, and $4.19 for fiscal year 2026. Is that the correct understanding?
Chairperson, that is for water and sewer, that is correct.
Yes.
5.7% for fiscal 24, 5.7 for fiscal 25, and then 5.8% for fiscal 26. But concurrently with that, there is also the 6% series of increase for 24, 25, and 26 for stormwater.
Stormwater rates, okay. All right, excellent. All right, I'm going to turn to members of council for any comments. Council member?
Yes. No, I'd just like to make a comment, piggyback off what Councilman Johnson said. I think all of our council members feel the same way. We want clean water here, sewage. You hear so much bad news on TV about other states, and we are really lucky. So I'm in favor of the increase as long as I have clean water. I just think just keep doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that, first of all, this is a game-changing piece of legislation, and I am happy to know that each year during budget that we are going to be able to address how we're going to increase the fees in a way where it will not continue to have so much contention between the community and the city of Wilmington. So I'm happy to be a sponsor of this legislation, and I'm just looking forward to being able to get this information out to the community as well. It tends to come up quite a bit in some of the civic association meetings that I attend as it relates to this water increase and the whole topic of the water increase. So I'm excited about this piece of legislation, and congratulations to all the council members for this, presenting this. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else in chambers? I'll kick it to Councilmember Darby on Zoom.
Yes, no, thank you, Council Chair. With this piece of legislation, I have a question. So even though what you're proposing is that we don't vote on it every year, we're going to vote every 3 years on the rates in regards to water and storm rates. In between that 1 year, will we still get presentations about how our water, fund and water sewer, where we are, our fiscal projections? Will we still get the yearly updates, even though we're not voting?
Yes, that's still the plan. Black and Veatch is not going anywhere. They'll still be here.
Okay, and then I know that CAB, the advisory board, I know we talked about them much in this piece of legislation. They already exist and whatnot, but also with I was wondering if in this legislation, if we could address more of how, or maybe another piece of legislation about them being a little bit more public, open to the public, more recorded meetings. Because I think it's important that within those 3 years that the public is still aware and know of the conversations that's being had about our water. And just to be clear too, this is not about affordability either. So this isn't going to change because we learned in our budget that our water rates are going to go up every year. Going to a 3-year is not going to change that. It just, this legislation is really, in my opinion, about council and council not having that budgetary responsibility in the 3-year span. So for me, this is like more about council than the public to me. And it's about taking the politics out of it, as you call it, because I guess council can't do that. So I guess to safeguard the community, we got to protect them from us. So that's what this legislation in my head is about. And when we go to the 3 years, this is not about affordability. I want that to be clear. This is just about taking the politics out and council not being a part of the vote every year. But I hope that we still have the presentation, and I hope that the Citizens Advisory Board becomes more, I know the meetings are public, but having them recorded. Currently right now, there's not a representative from the city of Wilmington that serves on the board to have a Wilmington voice. So if we're going to do this, I hope that we're investing into making sure that the board is more transparent and has Wilmington representation. Thank you.
All right, very well. I'm going to kick it to members of the public. Anyone in person? Yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, Ms. Willard.
Thanks again,
Yes.
council, committee. And I just want to say, you know, I think water's a really big issue. I think a lot of you, we've had conversations. I think the public cares about this issue because, you know, a lot of people can't afford the water. And so, you know, we have like 11,000 customers out of 37,000 who are behind in their water bills. And there's, I'm part of this awesome group, the Wilmington Fines and Fees Justice Team, that has these national partners that are helping us to understand what other cities are doing to address this issue of water affordability. And I think that at this moment, when we have an opportunity and when, you know, even the national government is looking at issues of affordability and we're seeing these water assistance programs, to say, you know, we can't deal with that except for every 3 years, I just think it's a mistake. I think this is the time to like be digging into solving our water problems, not saying we're only going to think about it every 3 years. And there's a reason why we do an annual budget. You know, there's a reason why corporations do like annual projections. It's because things can really change on a year-to-year basis. We just watched like interest rates go from what, 0% to 5%, you know, and there's just things change year to year. And I think that residents deserve to have council pay attention and give them their say and give them a chance to tell you what these changes mean for them on a yearly basis. So I would just hope that you don't say we're only going to talk about water every 3 years. I think you should talk about it every year, just the way you talk about the annual budget. Thank you very much.
Anyone else from the public? All right. Do we have anybody on Zoom? Yeah. All right. Very well. They'll turn back to council for any final comments or questions. I have just some notes prior to us moving this forward. Again, this is well received. Regarding the Citizens Advisory Council, that is a separate legislative item that if the composition of the board needs to be addressed, we can certainly do that. That is not certainly in this piece. And certainly the intent, and I apologize if it was maybe said or maybe it was a misconception, is not to not talk about water. We're going to be talking about water all the time. The citizen, you know, the Water Assistance Fund, we're always going to talk about water as part of the budget. But the thing is, this allows us to do more long-term financial planning, because you shouldn't have to worry about, you know, next year saying, oh, well, 0%, and then, oh, yeah, gotcha, the year after that, 15%. That's not fair. That used to happen in Wilmington. So that's where we're just being transparent, as we are in 108, and saying, look, this is what it's going to be the next few years. This is what we can expect. That way we can talk to residents. So I appreciate everyone's support. Any other final comments or questions? All right. This time I'll entertain a motion to move ordinance 23-020 to full, out of committee to full council for vote.
So move.
Second.
All right, so properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Mr. Chair.
All right, ordinance 23-020 will proceed to full council for vote on May 18th. Thank you very much. Okay. Yes, and at this time, I'd like to excuse Vice Chair Hartley and Councilmember Oliver. Thank you very much. Now, I believe there is one more legislative item on the agenda. It's a busy time of year. We have a resolution to encourage the General Assembly to support SB 67, an act to amend Title 11 in the Delaware Code relating to misconduct of our public officials. I believe the prime sponsor on this is Councilmember Spadola. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This resolution is to show council support for Senate Bill 67, which is being introduced by Senator Sarah McBride, a whole host of sponsors, and bipartisan as well. I think you all know I'm all about ethical government and doing our part to promote good government, and this piece does that. It's known as the Abuse of Power Prevention Act, and in a nutshell, right now, you know, if an elected official gets in trouble, gets arrested for something, they're always tagged with the official misconduct charge. And right now, that's only a Class A misdemeanor. This law essentially expands the definition of official misconduct to fit the crime, and it can range from a Class A misdemeanor to a Class A felony based on the charges being brought. So it's fairly simple, and that is it in a nutshell.
Okay, Councilmember Darby.
Now, I just want to say that I'm in support of this legislation. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor. And I just think this is important as recent issues with our city council in regards to residency, people voting on legislation that's connected to them. And I think we just have to really hold public officials accountable for their actions, and being able to use that and have that measure of accountability, I think is so key and important, especially for this city council. Thank you.
And anybody else on Zoom? All right. And anyone from the public in person, in chambers? Anyone on Zoom? Okay. All right. I definitely, thank very much, Councilmember Spadola, for bringing this to our attention. This is something I really have to dig more into it. I certainly in support of the idea, although for my time working on reclassification of crimes, namely the Delaware Code in terms of criminal crime reform. We do have to be careful of some unintended consequences sometimes. You know, certainly we have a great Attorney General's office now, but for say some reason there was an overzealous prosecutor. We do have to be mindful of that. So again, I know this is supporting it, but you know, I hope to have some more conversation with the folks in Dover about what the intent is, as it is when you make any new crime, whether it's you know, holding a firearm or anything. So I just wanted to say, you know, again, I'm supportive of it. I just hope we can flesh out just more, you know, what the ranges are from misdemeanor to, you know, the Class A or high grade crime. So that said, this is a resolution, so it does, number one, I'll add myself as a co-sponsor. Number two, this is a resolution, so it will be, does not need to be voted out of committee. I don't know what council meeting is going on. I know the 18th, I believe, is full, so we, okay. So I will, I'm not sure which meeting it will be on, Councilmember Spadola, but we'll, Ms. Bassnett will let us know about which meeting. But certainly if we need it in Dover, we can certainly make sure it gets down there as soon as possible. All right. Oh, is there anything for the final comments?
No, just to your
Ms.
point,
Sponsor.
Mr. Chair, I do know that the actual legislation spells out the how, you know, the specific, I think it was the monetary amounts, what would fall as a Class A misdemeanor all the way up to a Class A felony.
Excellent. That's perfect.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to be added.
Okay, please add Councilmember Bracy as well. All right, thank you very much for clarifying that. I frankly had not, I've been swimming in the city council business, so I hadn't read it, but thank you, that it clears it up. And that again takes away any concern I had, just because it should be spelled out what the amounts are, so that's perfect. All right, thank you very much, Councilmember Spadola. And just moving to the general housekeeping matters, the quick update on the ARPA funds. As we do every month, do we have an update, Ms. Mergler?
Council Chair, may I be excused?
Do we have quorum? Yes, yes, you can be excused. Okay, Ms. Mergler, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. Okay. So, starting with a summary of allocated funds by category, I will wait for WITN to pull up the presentation. Here we go. Okay. So, starting on the second slide. Perfect. Okay, in the summary allocated by category, this shows that we started with a total of 55 million, and we have allocated all of our funds. So that is a significant change from the previous time I presented. So on the next slide, here are some of the major changes. So the biggest thing is it's not really a new project, more so that we have included the budget for the out years of the building of the Community Public Safety Initiative in the Building Safer Communities category. So if we include all of the money that we'll need to run these programs through the end of 2026, that actually exceeds the original budget of the category. So we had to do a transfer from workforce development, which had a significant amount of funds left. We also needed to increase the budget for admin costs to add an additional person for UHY advisors. There are compliance specialists. There are a couple of years in which activity has been so great that we need an additional person. So those funds came out of workforce development. So now we have slightly different totals for each of these major categories. And now I can go through each of the categories and show.
Yes, yes, please. And so I gather that means there's been a lot of action from Dr. Deborah Mason. As I know she's been very busy.
Yeah.
In fact, I heard she was in a Gunstead meeting, and she's been very involved in a lot of community meetings. So it's nice to see it's coming to
Absolutely.
fruition, what the actual budget is. It seems like we're going to need to revisit how to get more funds in her coffers.
Yeah, we'll have to
Next.
fundraise.
Next fiscal year. Okay, got it. All right. Would you mind going through those?
And then
Those new projects briefly?
Sure. Next slide, please. Okay, our new projects for this month. We have the Community Public Safety Initiative, WCAC, the Wilmington Community Advisory Council, will be conducting public safety roundtables. This amount is $100,000 for the next 4 years, so it's $100,000 per year.
You know how many roundtable,
Yes, that's Councilmember.
sorry. Do you know how many roundtables they're gonna be conducting?
I can find out that number for you and send it to you.
And that begs the question, Ms. Mergler, it's been a positive outlook, so I can't speak for Councilmember McCoy, but me, if Dr. Deborah Mason can give a presentation, public safety meeting, that would, I think, work, just since there's been some major updates.
Right.
That would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think she's scheduled to attend the next Public Safety Committee meeting. She is.
Okay, great. Excellent.
Wonderful. The next one is also a Building Safer Communities. This is $100,000 to allow us to purchase an automatic license plate recognition cameras system. The next, Central Baptist CDC, this is obviously a very large outlay. This actually will cover the cost of development, or at least the construction financing for 5 new affordable homes on the east side. It will also allow for the purchase of a new facility for Central Baptist on the east side as well. So that is that total cost. Next, these two are related. $50,000 to finish amphitheater construction for the Urban Artist Exchange, and $75,000 for a teen apprenticeship program at the Urban Artist Exchange as well. So those are all of our new projects for this month.
All right, excellent. Any other questions from members of council? All right. Yes, Ms. Basnight?
I just want to make sure that I'm interpreting this slide correctly. The slide under Building Safer Communities, the $450,000 for Network Connect, CSC, and YEP per year. Okay, so we're going to be doing it per year for how many years? For 2 years?
Until the end of 2026.
Okay, I just wanted to verify that. And I know that Ms. Mason will get into this, but is the allocation in here for the organizations that would get the small grants? Is that factored in the total amount for Building Safer Communities or under one of these categories?
Yes, that $105,000 for small organizations.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay. I guess the next thing is, do we know the time frame of when that's going to be allocated out?
Let's see. I'll have to coordinate with Dr. Mason on an answer for that one.
Okay. All right. And I think likewise, you mentioned also about the WCAC, because that's $100,000 per year for a total of $400,000.
Correct.
Okay. One last question,
Yes,
Chair.
please.
The neighborhood revitalization for the Central Baptist CDC, the $2.8 million. Is there a difference between this pot of funds and the funds that we're going to be utilizing out of the tax stabilization budget coming up for fiscal year 2024?
Yes, so these would still be ARPA funds.
Okay.
Whereas the tax stabilization reserve funds would be coming from the general fund.
Okay, is one more like a criteria, like is it, I guess, is the priority to spend down on these funds first prior to us using the tax stabilization fund?
It can be done concurrently. So essentially, this was an ARPA allowable project, and it fell within our focus area on the east side, which was part of our projected use for the funds, essentially, our goals for the funds. So these were allocated before even we came up with the tax stabilization reserve portion.
Yes,
To
please.
piggyback on what Stephanie is saying, the funds that will be in the neighborhood stabilization under the special project fund does not have the same restrictions as ARPA, so they'll be less restrictive, and you could have more uses for it without all the reporting that's required under ARPA.
Okay, and last question,
Yes.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Ms. Bessie.
And now with all of these categories, all the allocations are fully allotted now, so people come to ask, we can see all those funds is allocated. Okay, correct, thanks.
It took us, 2 years?
I'm happy. Finally.
You gotta get some more, right? Okay, all right, very well. Thank you very much, Ms. Mergler. So I guess, do we have to do this monthly now, or I guess we don't.
We don't. I mean, and everything is on OpenGov.
Mhm.
So, as the projects are being spent down, you can actually capture that on OpenGov too, right?
And I'm happy to still put together and send the presentation to you.
Any changes regarding spend downs, that'd be helpful for the public. Maybe we could do it once every other month or something like that. But that's helpful. Thank you very much. So we got there. All 55 allocated. Thank you. All right. And any comments from the public? Okay. Seeing none, again, thank you, Chief of Staff Washington and Ms. Mergler, as always, providing a comprehensive report as we've gone through this. It's nice to see the money spent, so we can't say we're holding on to it. By chance, did the state still have their money, or the county, or are we the first to spend all of ours?
Well, they're allocated but not yet spent.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Okay.
But everything has to be encumbered by 2024. And-
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we're a year ahead of schedule.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, very well. And last but not least, the disparity study update, is that, I guess, you, Chief
It
of Staff
should
Washington,
be
Ms. Mergler?
Mr.
James
Parks.
is here.
Yeah.
James
is-
okay, I
yeah,
didn't see
there
you.
we go,
Sorry about that.
James.
All right, our Small Business Director, Williams, the floor is yours, sir.
Absolutely. First off, Committee Chair Johnson, committee members and other council members in attendance, thank you for having me today. I'm just going to give you a brief update on the disparity study progress. WIT, I believe, has the deck that I'll be covering.
There we
I'll
go.
give you a moment to get that up. All right, thank you. I think everyone can see the deck at home or in the office.
Yep.
All right, so like I said, just to provide a brief overview of where we stand and what progress has been made. As we all know, the disparity study was conducted by Miller 3 and made public back in February. We've been working to bring some meaningful changes to really improve the city's procurement process. So next slide, please. So today I'm just going to focus on the progress that we've made so far. You'll see in all my slides structured to show the recommendation, the action plan that we've decided to pursue, and then I'll talk about the progress made. So I won't go through everything that's written here, but just in terms of addressing the decentralized nature of the procurement function here within the city, Miller 3 didn't make a judgment either way whether or not the city's procurement practices should be decentralized versus centralized. However, they did recommend that we evaluate the program and make assessments as to what activities would be better supported in a centralized nature, et cetera. So basically, since the last update we provided, OED and the Finance Department have been looking at and exploring different technology solutions to help improve the DVE certification workflow, allowing us to centralize some of those activities and to make the data more readily available to departments as they explore contracts for various activities. In addition to the certification workflow, we're looking at online support services for DVEs. I know that the Finance Department has online vendor registration in the pipeline and being rolled out as we speak, in addition to exploring contract compliance capabilities. So in the near term, we're looking to move forward and progress the DVE certifying tool that I mentioned just a minute ago. So we're working on securing the funding and working with the vendor to determine the terms and come up with an agreement for how that will be provided for the city. Lastly, as I mentioned, I know that vendor self-service is being implemented by the procurement team. This is something that will allow DVEs and all vendors to have their data captured more accurately than perhaps in the past, because they'll have control over making their own updates in Tyler Munis. And one of the changes that we've also made over the past couple of weeks is that as I work with potential DVEs, I'm encouraging them to also register as a vendor, which is a bit of a change from how we've done it previously. So in addition to certifying as a DVE, I'm certainly encouraging them to register with the city as a vendor, which will open up more exposure to opportunities and make their data available to departments as they're looking for various vendors. And then lastly, I know that finance is working on acquiring a full-time equivalent to handle DVE administration and some oversight functions. So that's something that I know the the Director of Finance and I have have been discussing for the past couple of weeks. And I know that they're working on bringing someone on board in the near term. All right, so if we move on to the next slide, please. All right, the next recommendation had to do with identifying and supporting community economic development partnerships who could help to form an ecosystem in the procurement space. So our office has been working closely with a couple of key partners within the community, one being the Wilmington Alliance, which our office worked with them to support basically a $15,000 grant in funding on behalf of the city through the National League of Cities in support of inclusive procurement activities. So we've worked with Wilmington Alliance, and they've agreed to provide services to businesses that are interested in procurement contracts by providing a number of support services, such as helping to provide additional marketing for businesses, helping to complete certifications, any number of activities where businesses could use support to help increase their chances of competing for city contracts. And then secondly, True Access Capital has created a new markets opportunities initiative, which they kicked off about a week and a half ago. This program is going to provide, again, additional services to minority-owned businesses that are interested in working with governments, including the city of Wilmington. So, the relationship that our office has with True Access Capital is one that is very strong, and we'll continue to work with them in support of this initiative. They kicked off the program with a just about full-day event, procurement fair at the Wilmington Public Library back on April 27th, during which I presented and discussed the city's procurement practices, especially the DBE program. So generally, I think we'll continue to look for opportunities to support community partners who are doing work in this space, but then also just making sure we're out in the community and working to attract more DBEs into the city's DBE certification program, and looking for opportunities to strengthen the program there. Next slide, please. One of the recommendations was training related. So just wanted to highlight that recently the procurement team completed a citywide procurement training, which our office participated in. One of the takeaways that I wanted to highlight was basically just that we learned that there are opportunities for the DBEs, as I mentioned, to certify, or should I say, to register as a vendor, regardless of if they have a contract or expecting a payment or not, and that could lead to increased awareness by departments of their business, and as departments are seeking out vendors for particular roles, that'll help them to be in that circulation. Additionally, our office, I plan to attend any industry-related procurement topic events, workshops, trainings, conferences, etc. Over the past year or so, I've participated in a couple of economic development conferences, and there were a lot of good takeaways that I was able to bring back with me. But I think if we can focus a little bit now on diverse procurement and supplier diversity, that we'll be able to glean some industry best practices and really bring those back to the city for its benefit. Next slide, please. And then lastly, I guess as I had mentioned just a while, at the beginning of my presentation, we've been actively pursuing procurement workflow tools that will help modernize our processes and help to provide better data. We really have very little data at our disposal to help us manage the procurement process. One of the front runners that we have in mind, we've had several demonstrations that were provided to us from, for instance, DelDOT, who uses the tool that I think we're favoring at the moment. We're moving forward with the necessary steps to try to bring in this tool in the near term and to use the fiscal year 23 budget to get that implemented sooner rather than later. And then lastly, the same provider also has a contract compliance tool, which is one of the modules that perhaps in a future date, we could pursue to add some additional centralization of the contract compliance oversight and enforcement. So just another tool that we're looking forward to down the road, though. I think that would be a longer term objective, perhaps next year. Basically, all in efforts to help improve the data that we have available in order to better manage the procurement processes. And those are the updates that I want to provide today. I'll turn it back over to you, Committee Chair Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. I guess the only question I have, thank you for providing this comprehensive overview. It really is in regards to help quantify this for council is, do we have a timeline, say, what's 0 to 6 months, what's 6 months to 12 years, what's year, 1 year plus, just so we can kind of stay on track as a council to, work with you to make sure that we're on track? Or is that something you can create?
It is something I can create. I'd be happy to do that. And they would just be estimates. I have sort of in my mind how I think things will pan out. Like you mentioned, some of the items I mentioned even today, we're already moving the ball on, and we're hoping will be in the nearer term. But there are still some policies and procedures and things that may take a little bit longer. But I can certainly give you an outline of my thoughts.
And that will help, because I know definitely on this committee as well as council, there's a lot of interest in us being involved and helping out where we can, especially legislative items. So I think it's a lot covered here, which is great, but I think in terms of just globally a timeline, that would be helpful. So if we can have that by next month, that would be very, very good, just so we can, again, make sure we stay on track.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, keep us up.
Much of this is going to be resource driven, just as we have appropriated in the budget, or you have appropriated budget funding in the finance department to hire someone to manage this process. And so it's not only the people behind it, but also the technology behind it as well. So I just want to manage expectations as we start putting more resources behind this. We'll see better results.
Okay. And we are searching, do we have any candidates for that job?
No, the budget has to be passed.
Oh. Okay, well, let's hope we get there. Oh, yeah, that pesky thing.
That part.
Okay, gotcha. All right, after that, then we can post for the job, right?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, thank you very much, Ms. Williams. Any comments or questions from members of council? Okay, all right.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, that's Council President. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure if I missed this part, but I'm assuming that the city, that we were given a poor rating from that study. And I'm assuming that was based on like actual numbers. I'm not sure if that's true or not. But what is our overall goal as far as improving whatever that study found? Like, do we have like a certain percentage of contracts that we want, or are there any numbers associated with what we want to, how we want to do better as a city?
So I don't know if you want me to.
Yes, Chief.
So the report, the study itself, really pointed out the weaknesses that we have within the city around procurement and DBEs. So there were recommendations that were made. And what we're doing is we're looking at those recommendations, coming up with the actual action plan, and actually trying to address those over a phased period of time. Does that help?
So no actual numbers as far as certain percentages that we want to make sure that we're reaching.
We haven't set any percentage goals up, although in the report you will see where some of that disparity exists in certain segments of our population. But like I said, I think the first thing you have to do, you have to set up the proper structure internally before you even attempt to try to say, okay, I'm going to reach this number. Because a lot of things are fractured within that we have to address, and even through a legislative process.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now turning to members of the public, any comments or questions? Okay, all right, seeing none, then I'll turn it back to council for any final comments or questions.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
just one
Councilmember
question.
Bracy.
Do we know how many certified DBEs we have in the pipeline now?
I guess, James.
Right now, yeah, our number is, I believe it's 132 certified DBs. I believe we've done like 25, and I think I have about 3 sitting on my desk that'll be done by the end of the week. So I think we've done about 25 in the past 12 months, which was a huge uptake.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Williams, for the clarification. We definitely look forward to at least receiving, the general timeline before your report next month. All right, well, that completes our agenda. I appreciate everyone at home who joined us at home and in chambers. It was quite a lengthy night, but, again, this is budget season. We have a lot to get through. All right, so as a housekeeping matter, the next Finance Committee meeting is next Monday, May 15th. We'll have more budget-related items on the agenda as we look forward to potentially passing the budget next Thursday, May 18th. So again, thank you everyone for being engaged. At this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, it's been properly moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. All right, the meeting has adjourned, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you, Wilmington.